People don't yet realise that there is no answer for the survival of the legacy automakers. There is nothing they can do to survive. Forget your own prejudices, your own hopes. Look at this clinically, analytically. What is the answer? Now, I love analogies. So let's say you're on the Titanic. It's hit an iceberg. It is unsinkable. The officers assure you nothing to worry about, just stay calm. Then you slowly begin to realise it's sinking and the crew are launching the lifeboats and there's not enough of them. Now, at a specific point in time, different for most people, you suddenly know for a fact that the ship will sink. You're probably going to drown. What do you do? Now, this is not a simple hypothetical question. I really would like you to think what you'd actually do. You see, this is the exact situation that all of the legacy automakers find themselves in. BMW, Citroen, Ford, Vauxhall, Toyota, VW, Mercedes, all of the others. They've built up a huge industry very successfully, employing tens or hundreds of thousands of people. They've made ICE cars over the last 70 or 100 years, millions after millions of them, very successfully. They've become really good at it, really high quality in many cases. Customers queue up for the latest release or models. But now, suddenly they have hit the perfect storm. And everything is going wrong all at the time. This is their iceberg. Well, first, there's a huge global environmental movement claiming the world is coming to an end unless we stop burning fossil fuels. Now, don't know about you, doesn't matter whether you believe it or not, but we do all know that ICE cars produce pollution. Well, first, there's an instant killer, carbon monoxide, kills you pretty swiftly if you run your car in a confined space. Next, we have the long-term killers, nitrous oxides, 2.5 PM particles, hydrocarbons, and these work their way into our bodies, particularly children and babies, causing long-term debilitating diseases and learning and behavioural issues. Then there are the longer-term killers, carcinogens that will likely give you cancer or cause you heart troubles and strokes. Well, none of this is new. It's all been known for decades, way back in the 60s. Well, second, we're faced with the fact that ICE cars have changed very little in the last 10 years. See, once cars only lasted a few years, and technical advances happened at a breakneck speed. The next model was so much better than the old one that you just had to have it. We queued up to change models every 2 or 3 years. But nowadays, cars are much better. Many now have 5 or 7 year manufacturer's warranties. They last a long time. The dramatic advances simply stopped happening. A list of features today is very little different to that offered 10 years ago. There's just nothing new. Even getting better economy today is a bit like breaking an Olympic record. You need a very accurate stopwatch to measure it. Yet prices have leapt up. Far from in the old days, just paying a few £1,000s to upgrade, today you're expected to pay tens of thousands of pounds. Yet that new car you're looking to buy is little different apart from the number plate to tell all your neighbours and friends that it is actually a new car. Well, third, cities and states all around the world are imposing bans or fines on vehicles that produce pollution. In the UK, look at the cost of road tax for a dirty diesel smoker versus a modern petrol car. And those fines and areas are increasing, not going away. Look at your ULEZ in London recently. In South Wales, countless other roads in the UK, motorway speeds are limited to 50 miles an hour, with proud signs stating to reduce pollution and clean up the air. Well, it's a fact that a car at 50 miles an hour produces way less than half the pollution as at 70 miles an hour. How much longer till we're limited to 40 miles an hour everywhere because of the pollution the cars cause? Well, fourth, all the data, all the graphs, all the hype states loud and clear that the future market is electric, and specifically BEV, or battery electric vehicles. EVs are now regularly in the top 10 of overall car sales, not just EVs, but overall, and the best-selling car in the world today is an EV. Well, if you read the messages, This is not a fad, this is actually the future. Now look at ICE car sales and the picture starts to get really gloomy. After a peak around 2008, just before the financial crash, and another peak in 2016, sales are just in gradual decline. Yes, of course, there are exceptions, but the overall trend is down. Plus, all statistics show that we're holding on to our cars quite a lot longer. They just made them too good. You don't want to be part exchange, you're 2 or 3 years old, you can keep them awful lot longer. Now, everyone tells you things are rosy, sales are up, there's huge demand, but they would, wouldn't they? But again, dig a little deeper. World car sales are not up, not at the moment, but more importantly, where are the cars being sold? See, thank you very much to Statista for this fabulous animated graph. It shows what's happening in clear detail. Chinese sales have rocketed, Indian sales are climbing. Everywhere else is down dramatically. And with the rise of China comes its own car industry, both ICE and EVs, which satisfy the market internally. Yes, Western automakers try and do have some success, but those sales of their cars into China are now rapidly dying off. Let me explain why. We see, back in the 1970s, I lived in France for a while. Back in the UK, Wimpey and Broseley Homes were the dominant house builders, but they were totally unknown in France. And then while I was over there, Wimpey decided this was a great untapped market opportunity and bought up a huge plot of land north of Paris and just built one of their massive estates, thousands upon thousands of the top 5 UK best-selling houses. They didn't sell. So they dropped the price. They didn't sell. Finally, they sold the whole lot, thousands of them in one go, at absolute rock bottom prices to Paris Council for social housing. Now, there was indeed a huge opportunity, but the French didn't want, and still don't to this day, mass-produced houses in row after row, all identical, like we've accepted in the UK. They wanted individuality. Individual houses, different styles, different appearances, different everything from their neighbours. There was simply no market in France for the huge estate approach that had made Wimpey into the giant that it was. They believed their own hype. They believed they couldn't fail. They believed they would win in France. Unfortunately, the French didn't agree. Now, with our ICE cars here in the UK, we no longer want to spend tens of thousands of pounds for what the ICE manufacturers have decided that we want. Same old, same old. Well, we don't. We want excitement, individuality, difference, state of the art. And for that, we will pay silly prices. And I know it's an oxymoron that Tesla only make 4 models of EVs, 3, S, X and Y, and they all look the same. But they are different from all other cars on the road. It's actually seen as a bit of a status symbol if 2 of you have the same EV in the same road. Okay, so back to why legacy auto are doomed. The market has changed, but they haven't. They have so much invested in their old business model and such total and utter belief in their business model reigning forever that they have missed the big picture. EVs are now already about the same price as ICE cars, model for model, spec for spec. They are exciting, different, much in demand. And as the market grows, so the price drops still further. They're already in huge demand and getting cheaper. So back to the Titanic analogy. What do you, as a hypothetical CEO of a legacy automaker, do? I really would like to know the answer because I cannot see any answer that saves them. Well, first, let me tell you what they are actually doing. Oh, it's head in the sand, outright denial. GM in the States says that 50% of their car sales after 2035, when a ban on new ICE car sales come into force in the US, will be ICE cars. How does that work? Toyota states confidently that their owners do not want BEVs. They want ICE or hydrogen or anything but EVs. And they are building everything but EVs. Stellantis CEO states EVs are too dear, not what their customers want. Ford states they need to make more ICE cars to be able to afford to convert to EVs at some point in the future. All have tried to convert cheaply and quickly to EVs, some as just a token gesture. But here the Osborne Effect comes into play. Now, for those who don't know, Osborne was a successful computer company right in the early days of computers. They built a reasonably good for the time computer, and at the time when the advances were in technology was simply flying along. Everything was doubling every year. They had a steady stream of orders, were very popular. Then one day they announced that they just developed their next generation model, twice as fast, twice as powerful, twice as storage. Not yet in production, that'd be a little while yet, but when launched, it would be around the same price as the old model. Well, everyone knows what happens. Instantly, all their orders dried up overnight. Existing orders cancelled as everybody sat back and waited for the next model. Without any income, the company could not finish the prototype and send it into mass production. The company just went bust. Ever since, industry and big business has been terrified of killing their own existing sales while working on the next generation. Product development today is an extremely secretive affair. So, if you as a successful ICE car maker suddenly make an EV that is really very good, better than all your old ICE models, at the same price, your loyal customers will simply stop buying the old ICE cars and wait for the EVs. And with that goes their profit that they were making and was needed to transform their businesses into EVs only. And here is what they've all decided and why they will all fail. Take any of them. Let's use Vauxhall. Their flagship model is the Astra. They've sold millions of them, mostly produced Ellesmere Port on Merseyside, but now switched to Germany and elsewhere, while Ellesmere Port switches over to EVs. The latest prices on their website show a basic model Astra costs £26,610, and the middle model £29,500. Their new EV is being advertised with the basic model starting at £39,795 and the middle model £43,000. That's as much as £13,000 dearer on equivalent models. Now, it might just be me, but I believe it's the same body, the same interior, the same equipment, with barely any difference. It might have a little screen on the dashboard, and it has 18-inch wheels against the old ICE 17-inch. It's also got a pretty average range, pretty average performance, which in the real world means, 255 miles, 200 mile probably, versus a Tesla M3 is over 300 mile, ID4 328, Kia EV5 300 miles, Mercedes EQA 260 miles, BMW i4 307 miles. While there's absolutely no danger of the Osborne effects here, their customers are not going to be cancelling orders for ICE cars waiting for the new EV models, are they? At £39,000, it is only £3,000 less than a Tesla Model 3. It's about the same price as the much bigger and better Hyundai Ioniq 5, and it's dearer than both VW's ID3 and ID4 models by quite a considerable amount. I thought most business people understood basic supply and demand. When you launch a product, you get early buyers, those who need to have the very latest regardless of prices. They'll buy anything, anywhere, any price. They happily buy at a hefty premium. But they're less than 5% of your market. Now, the next batch are the mainstream buyers. This is your mass market where people will shop around, look at value for money, and look at the competition. So, what would they look at? Well, what about Citroen? Well, they sell petrol C4 models for £22,000, or the identical model, but with a battery for £32,000. Same body, same seats, mostly same interior, just £10,000 more for just the electric. And a worse range, 225 mile, that means well under 200 miles real world range. What about Peugeot? Petrol, 21,000, electric 32,000, same car body, same seats, £11,000 dearer, and just 218 mile range. That's appalling. Well, this is getting depressing. Forget Tesla, forget the make. But if you've been driving a particular make and model for the last 4 cars, and you now have a choice between another petrol one or an almost identical electrical one, but it's 10 to 15,000 pound more expensive, which will you choose? This is a no-brainer. So these are all made and owned by Stellantis. And their CEO's decision appears to be, well, let's spend the absolute minimum possible, let's reuse as much as is humanly possible, and let's produce a car that is identical in every way to our traditional popular models, but just much, much dearer, and secretly hope they don't buy it and upset our ICE car sales. Well, so I think it must be me, because when I buy a new car, if I'm asked to pay 10 to 15,000 pound more than the equivalent petrol model, I actually expect a lot in return. I sat in a Mercedes EQA recently in a showroom, and it looked and felt and smelled exactly like the petrol version. From the inside, you could barely tell it was an EV. The only difference to a novice at first glance would be that the petrol car could go about 500 miles on a full tank, while the EV could only go 350. Well, the petrol version was 39 to 45,000, the EV 53 to 55. Well, this to me is not an attractive proposition. I love EVs, but this isn't attractive. I can never save up to £14,000 in fuel in the 3 years I'd keep this one. And I certainly don't want to spend another £1,000 buying a home charger. This offer is not attractive. Is that the intention? We see, here's the catch-22 dilemma. Let's use Astra prices. Can I sell the EV for the same 26,000 price as the petrol car? Well, no, not unless I can get into mass production. Well, can I get into mass production selling at 40,000? No, you've got to sell them cheaper. Now, I love this slogan. It tickles me. And I think it sums up the attempt by the legacy automakers to take over the EV world from Tesla. They really believed that EVs initially were no threat. They really believed you couldn't make a decent one. Laptop batteries, for goodness sake. They really believed Tesla would go bust. They really believed that if ever EVs ever took off, they could simply switch production to EVs themselves and rule the world once again. I would welcome what you, the viewers, think is the answer. And please, no silly, just start making lots more and get into mass production and drop your prices. Ford tried that and failed dismally. This year, they will lose billions on their EV division. Sensible answers only, please. I have looked at this from all angles, and here is my conclusion. EVs now cannot be stopped. It doesn't matter whether there's a new ICE car ban or not, doesn't matter whether there's subsidies or not, doesn't matter with or without massive anti-EV campaigns. They just make too much sense for a sufficient number of people for them to be successful in their own right. They are here to stay. They may not be the final solution. That could in the future, I don't know, personal drones, space shuttles, I don't know. But for the next decade, EVs will rule. Legacy automakers cannot stop making ICE cars because to abandon them overnight would be to instantly value their whole company at next to zero. They cannot currently make an EV at an attractive price and specification that makes the same profit as their ICE cars. It will take them 5 to 10 years from now to develop the knowledge, experience, technology and supply chain to be able to get into mass production and produce a really compelling, competitive car at a competitive price. If they could do it today, they would find there simply aren't enough batteries in the world to power them all. All existing EV makers are already heavily battery constrained. Well, the ICE car legacy makers' only income during those 5 to 10 years will come from ICE cars. But that market is dwindling rapidly. And soon they will have to discount even those ICE cars, further reducing profits. And that ignores the bans that might or might not be coming into effect in 2030 or 2035. This is whatever happens. I believe that we are witnessing a race for survival. The early adapters have a chance of surviving. Those with their heads still in the sand are already doomed, dead man walking. Those that do survive will be very much reduced in size, nowhere near the giants they once were. Well, thanks for watching to the end. I hope this kept your interest. I would welcome your comments on this. EVs still have a bumpy road ahead. I'll be releasing another 2 videos in this series shortly. One highlighting the main obstacle soon to be encountered. That's the ICE and petrochemicals industry's last chance. And the other one focusing on the petrochemical industry and the implication of a total collapse. I'm Dave.